Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
It's the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 187 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. I'm joined, as always, by the infamous Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. Yourself?
Very good, my friend. Very good. Let's dive straight into the review part of the show here. I'm going to waste no time. We're going to start at the Nottingham Arena in Nottingham, United Kingdom. This was obviously last Friday, a debut win for Charles Frankham, although he didn't really overly impress, to be honest with you. He seemed a little bit too easy to hit for my liking. He had a huge size advantage over his opponent. But yeah, a win nonetheless. Obviously, he banks those rounds. It was a 4-rounder. A win against a guy whose name I won't even try to pronounce. Also on the bill, Chris Billam-Smith. He was thrown on as a little bit of a replacement kind of thing. I think a few fights fell out of bed on the week of the fight night, and then Chris Billam-Smith was one of the guys to step in. He managed to move to 9-0, just a little keep busy before he has his fight against Richard Riakporhe soon, and it was a win against Yassin Habachi, who's now 5-14 with 5 draws. He retired on his store after 3 rounds, so a stoppage win there for Chris Billam-Smith. Also on the bill, speaking of the Smiths, Stephen Smith, he returned to the ring after about a year and a half out of it. He picked up his 26th win inside 30 fights. It's, of course, 26-4, a points win over 6 rounds against Des Newton, who's now 7-5. Newton was down in the 5th from a body shot, but like I say, he got back up and survived the distance. Also on the bill, Terry Harper moved to 7-0, a TKO in the 6th round against Claudia Lopez, a former world champion, if I'm not mistaken. 25-10 now, her record, I should say. And Terry Harper 7-0, like I say. Lee Wood, he looked amazing, actually. He moved to 22-1. He really did steal the show. It was for the Commonwealth featherweight title. Ryan Doyle, former holder of the belt, big puncher Ryan Doyle. I think he really does blow hot and cold, though. 17-4 now with 1 draw. He just wasn't at the races. It seemed like it was perhaps his game plan to try and come on late in the fight, because I think he'd been, like 10 rounds quite a few times. I think he may have even gone 12 rounds before, whereas Lee Wood didn't really have experience in the later rounds. But no, he was completely out of his depth, so it would seem, and he was outclassed pretty much for the whole fight. I don't think he even won a round. Really impressive there from Lee Wood. I actually believe that Doyle would win, probably by stoppage. Obviously, looking at Lee Wood's only loss, it came to Gavin McDonnell. I said it on last week's show, not a puncher at all. And Ryan Doyle, we know he can crack. So yeah, a brilliant win there for Lee Wood, who is now 22-1, and to lose to a guy like Gavin McDonnell, not a bad fighter at all. Obviously a 2-time world title challenger in his own right. So Lee Wood, a lot better than I perhaps made him out to be last week, so I apologise for that. And a guy that perhaps we all thought was a little bit better than he was, Jordan Gill, 23-0 he was. He was on the verge of being ranked in the top 15 with a WBA. It was supposed to be anyway, a defence of his international WBA featherweight title. In the other corner, the man that we hadn't really heard much about, Enrique Tinoco. He was a guy that no one really knew. And then, like I say, it looked really bad because he was able to beat Jordan Gill and beat him in real good fashion. He was down 3 times during the fight, all from body shots. Tinoco, like I say, he was a guy that we didn't know much about. He had a record of 17-5 with 4 draws. I mean, you look at his resume, he'd been the distance with a few prospects. He didn't have any standout wins at all. And Jordan Gill, I mean, look at that for an inflated record. 23-0. Do you know what? I hate to say it, because he could go on to big things. I'm not saying you can completely write him off. He's only about 23 or 24 years of age, so he's still got a real future in the sport. He's flown through domestic levels, so it would seem, with the Commonwealth. He completely obliterated Ryan Doyle. And he's looked really good. He's passed every test, really. I mean, he had a bit of a hiccup, didn't he, with was it Jason Cunningham? Actually, he had a little bit of a hiccup with him. Aside from that, though, he's looked pretty good. And this was, like I say, a massive upset. I mean, yeah, to actually think this would have been his 24th win. I mean, it's just not good enough. It reminds me a little bit of Zelfa Barrett, the way he had a completely inflated record, then he gets beat by Ronnie Clark. And Ronnie Clark is a good fighter. We knew about him. But the difference with Tinoco, he's a guy that we didn't know much about. Jordan Gill didn't know much about. Jordan Gill probably, overlooked him, underestimated him, because no one expected much from this guy that we'd never heard of. And it was all but factual, really, because he was a good fighter. He was a tough guy. We expected that coming from the part of America he came from. Like I say, all three knockdowns were body shots. Jordan Gill blamed it on, I think he said he'd been on the toilet many times with food poisoning or something. I mean, it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. He was completely beaten by the better man on that night, and it's worrying, actually, because, like I say, that's a prospect there who's lost his O, and Eddie Hearn has had a bit of bad luck, actually. Obviously, Anthony Fowler losing his O, Jordan Gill losing his O, and there was another prospect who lost his O. I can't think who it was now. Who's the other guy that lost his O recently? Another prospect. Lewis Ritson. So, not so good. Oh, and obviously Ted Cheeseman as well. It's not so good over there right now. Bad luck for the Matchroom team. But yeah, like I say, Jordan Gill's young enough to come again, but that was a bad showing there. And in the ring afterwards, when he kind of pretty much blamed it all on the food poisoning, that told me he's not even accepting this. He's actually finding an excuse. All the best to Jordan Gill. Nothing against him at all, but he was completely outclassed by this unknown. So question marks about where he goes, Jordan Gill. Certainly not in the top 15 with the WBA. I don't want to see that. Moving out now to Germany. An interesting fight over here between Robin Krasniqi, 49-5, going in against Stefan Hartel, who was 17-1. Hartel, a prospect who lost like the biggest fight of his career pretty much, but it didn't really mean he was done, and it really didn't mean he was done, because this one was for the EBU European super middleweight title. He was the underdog going in, but he was able to beat Krasniqi, if I'm not mistaken, in Krasniqi's backyard, and that denied Krasniqi getting his 50th win. So Stefan Hartel now 18-1, and Krasniqi now 49-6. He's been dethroned, so perhaps Hartel, I know that Anthony Yard's looking at Kovalev now, but again, I'd like to see Yard and Hartel, or anyone, perhaps even Callum Johnson, jump on that one. If you don't get a world title fight pretty quickly in the near future, then anyone can jump on that. How about Hartel against Hosea Burton? Give me that one. I can see that fight being made, by the way, if there's no rematch clause for Krasniqi here. Moving out now, though, to the Brentwood Centre in Essex, United Kingdom. The return of Liam Walsh. He'd been out the ring for 2 years, almost to the day. His record now 22-1. He hadn't boxed since losing to Gervonta Davis. He returned with a knockout himself against Ronaldo Kajina, 14-61 with 5 draws. A journeyman that's been around the circuit for many years now, really. He's now, like I say, picked up his 61st loss. It was a knockout in the 3rd round for Liam Walsh. Danny Dignam moved to 11-0, a points win against Rafael Jakiewicz, who's now 50-23 with 2 draws. Huge gap there in the experience, but a brilliant win for Danny Dignam over 8 rounds there. Sam Gilly was also on the bill, the prospect, 7-0. He took on Fernando Valencia. Fernando Valencia, 8-12 going in. The good thing about him, he had never been stopped until he took on Bradley Skeet, and he got stopped at the Brentwood Centre. He returned to the Brentwood Centre, and he got stopped again. It's an unlucky venue for him. He shouldn't ever come back to the Brentwood Centre, Fernando Valencia. He got stopped here in 2 rounds. A TKO by Sam Gilly. He becomes the quickest man to stop the guy. Harlem Eubank moved to 8-0, a points win over 6 against Eligio Palacios, who's now 7-44 with 5 draws, but that's about it really for the Brentwood Centre. The final two bills to mention for the review part of the show, they happened firstly here at the Convention Center in Tucson, Arizona, USA. On the undercard, Mykal Fox, will be speaking to him later in the show. He's now 20-1. He took on the 2016 Olympic gold medalist Fazliddin Gaibnazarov, I think his name is. 7-0 he was going in. A huge favourite. Mykal Fox coming off that very controversial loss to Ergashev, another good amateur. And Mykal Fox was able to upset the odds unanimously over 10 rounds. We will be speaking about that with him later. Miguel Mariaga boxed on the card as well. He picked up win number 28. He's got 3 losses. It was a retirement, though, after 3 rounds to Ruben Caveira. Caveira was down twice in the second, both by body shots, and Mariaga himself was actually down in the 3rd round, but then his opponent decides to quit on his store after that 3rd round. Very bizarre. Also on that bill, we should mention Carlos Castro, a good fighter by the way, and in the other corner, Mario Alberto Diaz, 18-3. He was down in the 2nd round, but like I say, unanimous decision over 10 there for Carlos Castro, certainly one to watch. Miguel Berchelt topped the bill against Francisco Vargas, obviously a rematch. The first fight ended in an 11th round TKO in favour of Berchelt, and he was able to win here because Vargas retired on his store after 6 rounds. I've got to be honest, I was watching, I think, probably the first 4 rounds, and then I switched it off. I thought it'd probably go late, but I missed it, so I missed the final little part of the fight there, but it was, of course, for Berchelt's WBC World Super Featherweight title. He's now 36-1. Again, on last week's show, Gary Russell Jr. said he'd like to fight him. I'd love to see that, or perhaps Berchelt and Gervonta Davis. Give me that one. Francisco Vargas, though, in the other corner, 25-2 with 2 draws. And the main attraction over here for me, though, Emmanuel Navarrete, 26-1, going in against our very own Isaac Dogboe, 20-1. Dogboe was down in the 6th round. It was somewhat of a questionable knockdown. He was down in that 6th, and then he was also down in the 12th, and the referee actually stopped the fight because the corner threw the towel in. Obviously, Paul Dogboe, the father of Isaac, he threw the towel in the final round, which was, I mean, a bit of a strange one, because I think he probably should have stopped it a few rounds earlier, but because he decided to actually stop it in the final round, it was a bit of a shame, because I know Dogboe, he don't want to get stopped, and it's a stoppage loss on his resume there in the final round. He would have liked to go the distance. He would have gone the distance. That's the problem with Isaac Dogboe. A little bit too tough for his own good. I remember speaking with him at the press conference in London between Amir Khan and Terence Crawford, and it was before their rematch had been completely finalised, and he basically said to me, look, the rematch is happening. The rematch is happening. I want the immediate rematch. And I said to him straight, I said, that's a hard fight, man. You know, he was just too big for you, Isaac. I mean, that's a hard fight, but respect to you, you know, for wanting that fight. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to respect him for going in there. But yeah, I think it was just pretty much a carbon copy of the first fight, unfortunately. He was just too small, and he isn't able to get his shots off because of it. Navarrete's got a chin on him. I think he's proven that in both the fights, the 23.5 rounds that they've gone. And he doesn't stop throwing punches. He's got a great work rate, a great engine. He's just a complete style nightmare for Dogboe, and it was alarming pretty much from the first 30 seconds of the fight. Dogboe probably nicked a couple of rounds in the midway kind of point, but that was about it. It was a one-sided fight, unfortunately. Dogboe's talking about moving up to featherweight. I think he's going to be way too small for those guys there, but you'd imagine the obvious fight would be Oscar Valdez, which is a fight I wouldn't say no to. And the final bill to mention, at the Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia, USA, 3 fights actually to mention over here. Mati Korobov, 28-2. He took on Emmanuel Alim, who was 18-1 with 1 draw. Korobov really did tire towards the end. It was quite surprising. He really gassed. And it was only a 10, it wasn't even a 12-rounder. But it was a weird one because Korobov got announced as the winner. I think it was a split decision or a majority decision. And then, you know, they both got out the ring, the fighters. I think they did their interviews, went back to the dressing room, and the show went to a commercial break, or an advert break, I should say. And they said, when it come back on, they said, they've changed the result from a majority decision to a majority draw. So can you imagine the heartbreak for Korobov after celebrating a win and then it being snatched away from you because the judge couldn't add up 12 rounds? It was just, 10 rounds. It was just one of the most bizarre things I've seen. I mean, it's boxing, it's full of bizarre things, but that was quite unfair, in my opinion. Mario Barrios as well, he really did impress. 24-0 now, a knockout in the second round against Juan Velasco. Again, on paper, I was looking at that saying, hey, Velasco's only loss was to Regis Prograis, a proven world-level fighter, a world champion now, and he was able to hit Prograis quite a lot. I think Prograis did it in about 8 rounds. He got the knockout finally, and I thought, hey, he's quite a live opponent here for Mario Barrios, but Barrios stopped him in the second round with a body shot. He wants the champions, and you can't really blame him for saying that. I mean, he knocked the guy out in a quarter of the time that Regis Prograis did it. That is a statement. And topping the bill, Jarrett Hurd, 23-0. He put his IBF, IBO, and WBA world titles on the line against Julian J. Rock Williams, a friend of the show. I'm pleased for him. I said it on last week's show. I'd love to see him win. Although, I had to be honest, I couldn't see it. I said I thought that Hurd would probably get the knockout or beat him on points quite wide. Hurd was down himself in the second round. It was a bit of a strange one, to be honest with you. It was like a little bit of a like a delayed reaction. It was a weird one. He got hit with a shot and then he seemed to have a slight delayed reaction and go down. But it was a brilliant fight, by the way. I mean, Hurd did try his usual tactics. He tried to impose his size, but he just couldn't really get off. I mean, he started slow. He's become a bit of a slow starter. Williams, on the other hand, got off to a fantastic start. He was putting his punches together really well. Like I say, the knockdown was a little bit weird. The tide seemed to turn a little bit in the mid-rounds. I think Jarrett Hurd had a lot of success there, and the speed was with Hurd, but I didn't strictly score it. I know it was pretty close, but in the end, our man Julian Williams managed to rip the title away from Jarrett Hurd, which is an incredible achievement, really, to think where, he got stopped by Jamal Charlo. To think he's gone from that to this, and credit to Julian J. Rock Williams. It was a brilliant post-fight interview. You could see the emotion on his face. He was in tears. We love a good story in boxing, and that was a good, feel-good story. So all the best there to Julian J. Rock Williams. I'd like to see him, if Tony Harrison loses to Jamel Charlo, I'd like to see those guys get it on. It'd be interesting. Jamel Charlo against Julian Williams, or perhaps let Hurd fight the loser of that fight as well. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Hurd fight Tony Harrison again, or perhaps fight Jamel Charlo if Tony Harrison does get the win in the rematch against Charlo. It is confusing, but there are some good fights to still be made in that division, don't get me wrong, even though most of the top guys have got losses now, at least one loss for every guy apart from Munguia. So there are still some brilliant fights to be made over there. But that's it for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part one, the last thing to do is to welcome guest number one. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the super lightweight prospect. It is, of course, the Professor, Mr. Mykal Fox. Mike, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me again.
So, Mike, you're obviously fresh off your win on Saturday. You boxed on the Buchelt versus Vargas undercard in Arizona. In the other corner stood the undefeated 2016 Olympic gold medalist Fazliddin Gaibnazarov. They didn't show the fight over here in the UK. They showed, I just think it was like the Dog Bay fight and the Buchelt fight. So please talk me and our listeners from the UK through the fight if they haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, it was on ESPN Plus. I didn't know y'all didn't have that app, but it was the last fight before the main card started, Dog Bay and whatnot. So we come out to the in the first round. We're both moving around a lot. He's actually very quick on his feet, so he was able to bounce in and out. Made me miss a lot. So I gave him the first 2 rounds, especially in the second round. He caught me with a big shot that everybody oohed and ahed about. Caught me with a couple shots, but they didn't really faze me. But he did try to finish me off. He tried to finish me in the second round, but after that, the third round, my coach, my dad, he tells me he can't fight backwards. So just keep pushing him back so he can't leap in and catch you like he did. So that was really the story of the fight on my end. I was just trying to keep him going back, show the judges that I'm trying to initiate the action. We exchanged, we both exchanged some great shots, but all in all, it was a great fight. He lost a point in the 7th round for holding. I think the pressure I was applying started to get to him a little bit. And then in the 8th round, he lost a point for backhanding because I believe my height was a factor that really frustrated him. Regardless of losing those points, I mean, even if he didn't lose those points, I would have, according to the judges, I still would have won that by a majority decision, 96-94 twice, and then 95-95. But all in all, it was a great experience. You know, Gaibnazarov, he's not a dirty fighter, so I don't want anybody to think that about him because you know, it's just things that happen during fights, especially like with the backhand things. Like me, I didn't even care. Like I was about to step in with another combination as the ref broke us. So, you know, but it wasn't a malicious thing.
And you've expressed a little bit of anger, I guess, towards the commentary team. Like I say, I didn't get to actually see it live. How bad was the commentary? Tell me, Mike.
Well, you know, with him being a top-ranked prospect on a top-ranked card, I expected some bias from the commentary team. It's not really their bias didn't upset me. Is the thing that necessarily upset me. It was what Crystina Poncher said. She basically accused the ref of cheating. She said that he wasn't being neutral, like from a conversation that she heard the tail end of while we were in the back, while the ref was going over the instructions. You know, we voiced a few things that we asked the ref to look out for, like if he tries to come in with his head down, be aware of that. If he tries to say I hit him behind the head, or them jumping, or since me being tall and jumping on top of my head when I try to duck or anything, we voiced those concerns. And then you know, the referee's name's Tony Zano. He said, "Man, it's your night to shine." Which is just something that referees say to fighters to basically say, I don't want to get involved in this fight if I don't have to. So just keep it clean. You know, she misinterpreted. She tried to. I guess she misinterpreted and tried to make it sound like he was being he wasn't reffing a neutral fight. And yeah, I didn't really appreciate that. And I did voice that. The biased commentary was expected. That was expected. Anytime you come in on the B side, you don't expect a fair shake. If I can tell that to any fighter on the way up, you coming on the B, don't be afraid to come on the B side because you can still potentially win. Like myself and Julian Williams, who both came on the B side, and he won a world championship, and I beat an Olympian. But you know, biased commentary, that's part of that's a trend as of late. That's really takes away from that can really take away from a good fight if a casual fan doesn't know what to look for.
Yeah, it certainly can. You know, this fight, obviously, you were a huge underdog going into it. Not only that, but you were coming off that loss in the fight before, which was only 12 weeks earlier. Tell me something, Mike. Your only loss, which I'm talking about here, was very controversial. I actually thought you won. You thought you won. Ergashev was a southpaw. He was a Uzbek fighter. Your opponent on Saturday was a southpaw, another Uzbek fighter. Did you learn anything from your quote-unquote loss to Ergashev that helped you in your win on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned from the Ergashev fight is really they while they're both different sides and they have different attributes, their style of fighting is sort of similar. So the thing I felt I needed to do more in this fight that I should have did against Ergashev was just to let my hands go more when they were backpedaling. Like Ergashev comes in with all his might with that left hand. And that's something you have to watch out for. If you can act like guys like to act like, oh yeah, he can hit, I can hit too. Honestly, you got to be mindful of that. But when I was able to make Ergashev take steps back, he was never in a position to really counter. Even Fazli, he every now and then he would do a little juke move or a little sidestep and try to counter. Ergashev, looking back at that fight, Ergashev never really did any of that. Unless if he was coming forward, he was punching. If he wasn't coming forward, he was on total defense mode. Those were times where I needed to let my hands go more. So in this fight, when I fought Gaibnazarov, when he sealed up and whatnot, I tried to just my main thing was to let my hands go. Just boom, 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 just let it go, let go combinations, a lot of punches to show the judges that, I'm here to fight. I'm initiating the action, and I think that I didn't show that I was initiating the action against Ergashev, and that's something that cost me. I think I countered well enough I still think I countered well enough to win that fight. I still landed cleaner shots, but everything was a reaction to a lot of what I did was a reaction to what Ergashev was doing, and that's where that's what my fault was in that fight.
Yeah, obviously, you mentioned the two guys having similar-ish styles. Obviously, Ergashev's, he's just all-out aggression. I mean, he tried to keep up his early knockout streak against you. But anyway, we last spoke back in August, so it's been a little while now. It was right before the DeMarcus Corley fight, and I remember you told the cool story of how you once went to watch him fight as a kid, and he threw his socks into the crowd, and you caught him, and it was crazy that you actually ended up fighting him. Now, obviously, you won that fight unanimously. Then in December you stopped in 2 rounds the undefeated Gonzalo De Lara, and then, like I say, in my opinion, you beat Ergashev, and now you've just beaten Gaibnazarov. So that's 4 serious step-ups there that you've made, and to be honest, it's probably more step-ups and big wins than any other prospect has done recently. It's been quite a glorious 4 wins there for you.
I appreciate that.
No problem, my friend.
It's just a matter of, I believe you got to challenge yourself before you get to a point where you're like on TV all the time, or you're up for like a title, or even maybe #1 contender before then. Like once I got to like my 10th fight, I used to tell people, I want to fight another prospect and see where I actually belong in this sport. Once I got to a certain point, we're not taking guys that are just going to lay down. I'm not building my career on that. There's a lot of fighters that do that, and then when they fight somebody that's just as good as them, like they crumble and it looks awful. And we don't. And I've seen it. I had seen it so many times. I never wanted that to be me. So, the times that I say they were calculated risks. We didn't just take the first thing. My team would see how we matched up stylistically, and my dad would tell me, "Oh man, if you want to be good, and if you think you can actually go far in this sport, you shouldn't be unwilling to fight these kind of guys." I was like, "All right, bet. Like let's do it then." I got a team that believes in me. I have a lot of faith in my own ability, so it was nothing. It was nothing to just take a challenge. Like really, I told people. They said, "Yeah, you suffered your first loss." I was like, man, if I really cared that much about being undefeated, I wouldn't have fought Ergashev. I wouldn't have fought Ergashev. I wouldn't have fought De Lara. I wouldn't have fought a lot of the guys on my resume. I wouldn't have fought Chop probably if I really was concerned about being undefeated. But it's always. I need to know for my peace of mind where I actually belong in this sport. And that's why I fight the way I fight. That's why I pick the fights I pick.
Yeah, and you certainly wouldn't have fought Gaibnazarov coming off a loss on paper. You wouldn't have wanted to make it 2 losses in a row if you really did care about the undefeated streak. Like I say, you've been very active lately. 4 big fights in a 9-month period. I want to kind of squash 2 questions in one here. Do you know just yet when your next fight will be? And obviously your last 2 fights have seemingly been at a catch weight of 142. What is the long-term plan? Is it to lose the 2 extra pounds and go down to 140, or would it be to move up to welterweight eventually for the titles?
I don't know when my next fight is. We just kind of let the dust settle. My promoter Marshall Kaufman had promoted a show before he flew out to Arizona to come see me fight. So I mean, I know he's been busy. He's probably letting his batteries recharge. we're all just taking a quick breather right now. But when the next call comes, I'll be ready. I'll be sure to get in touch with you and everything. But as far as my weight, I took it at 142. I feel like if there's something big on the line, like a junior title or some type of contention, I could perhaps lose the last 2 pounds. But like I said, my body is growing. As a 23-year-old. In all honesty, I think by the end of this year or early next year, I might start growing into a welterweight. And, I think I'll be able to be at welterweight for a long time. I'll still have of course, I'll still have that height advantage that everyone loves to talk about. I'll have that. I'll probably have that if I went all the way up to light heavyweight for real. But, the main thing is just taking our time, letting the body mature at its own rate. We can't force anything. Can't jump up too fast because that extra weight, that 7 pounds makes a difference. So we're gonna be smart about everything we do. And meanwhile we take time. We're gonna take our time and fights where we can get them.
Well said, my friend, and it's official. Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman, July 20th. Interesting fight. Mike, who have you got in that one? Good fight.
That's a good one. To pick. I think Pacquiao. I mean, he's the older fighter, absolutely, but Thurman. I feel like Thurman. I think I would pick Pacquiao because I feel like if he can, his output will give Thurman some trouble. His movement will give him some trouble. I mean, of course, Pacquiao is the same Pacquiao he was like 5 years ago, but I think he still. I think he still can do the 12 rounds. I think he still do the 12-round dance better than Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman slows down in the middle of the fight. He might get a second win, but with all the movement and the jumping in and out that Pacquiao does, I think that's going to present some trouble for Thurman as he tries to land those big shots. So I think I would have to pick Pacquiao on that one.
And your older brother, Atlantis, obviously he's boxing this weekend in your hometown against Nick Brinson. So it's a busy 7-day period for your dad.
Absolutely. But Tez is ranked number 4 by the WBO. He's trying to keep his rankings up. He needs to stay busy. He needs to get back at it. He hasn't fought since September, and it's not because he hasn't been training. It's just getting harder and harder for them to find fights for us. Like even for me, like my dad, my promoter talked to my dad and told us, he's like, man, I thought maybe the loss against Ergashev would have people jumping at a chance to fight Mike, but once they found out, that he can take a punch, you can barely hit him. He's tall AF, so he's still not an easy win. And, I thought for sure, like, man, maybe now somebody will try our hand, but this trend has been going on with Olympic Fox for a long time. Guys aren't chomping at the bit to fight him, and his activity. Alantez's lack of activity is what's plaguing him the most. When you have a fighter, it's like a knife. You got to keep him sharp. You got to keep that knife sharp, or it's not going to cut.
I like that analogy, my friend. I do. That's an interesting one. I've not heard that. I like that one. And the final real question for you, Mike. This weekend, I'm going to give you a chance here to have your say on this fight, if it is indeed one that piques your interest. Ivan Baranchyk against Josh Taylor, 2 undefeated 140 fighters, 2 of the very best in that weight. Who wins that one, and who do you want to see, obviously, progress to the final against Regis Prograis? It's going to be a mega fight, whoever wins.
I think everybody wants Taylor to win. Him and Regis were the favorites. I can see why. I've seen Josh Taylor fight. Very elusive, very good boxer, good feet. Bit of a showman. I actually like the way he fights. But Baranchyk, I mean, it seems he's been around, and I feel like he's been up there a little more than Taylor has. So, you know, his experience, and he's not a weak guy at all. This is going to be a good fight. I think I'm probably going to root for Taylor because he's more of my type of boxing style. But that's going to be a good one. I will definitely be tuned in. I have the zone. I'm going to be watching that I'm going to be watching that probably while Taylor's getting warmed up in the back or until they need me to do anything. And now I'll watch it the next day. I don't like me. I try to avoid hearing about fights because I like watching it and it feeling new and not knowing the result. I think I'm probably rooting for Taylor. I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm rooting for Taylor on this one just because I like his style. I prefer his style to Baranchyk.
Yeah, I know that feeling when you've got to try and stay away from your phone and social media and stuff like that to avoid hearing about a result. It's the worst when you're actually at a boxing show and there's a show clash where you want to watch both of them, but you're at one and the other one's recording at home, and then when you get in, you're telling everyone ringside, just don't tell me anything. I want to watch it when I get home.
Yeah, don't say
There's
nothing.
Always a spoiler though.
That was yeah, it always is. And that was the thing about my fight. I had fought, and as soon as I had fought, we come to the back. My dad had his cell phone. We turned on Jared Hurd and Julian Williams. We turned that fight on. I thought, man, I'm gonna have to dodge. I'm gonna have to dodge this zone for a day and a half. I'm gonna have to dodge my social media sites. And then they had just started the fight. My dad turns it on. We sat there. We all crowded around his iPhone X. And we watching the fight like we there, like we're there live and direct, right back at home. But you know, it happens, man. You can't catch all of them. I know you're a reporter, and you have your blog. I know you probably it probably kills when you can't see all of it.
It sure does, man. Especially like the other day, like I say, I was watching Hurd and Williams, and then at the same exact time, Dogbey's fighting Navarrete, and obviously Dogbey is, he's got a tie with Britain. He's got a big connection here with us, so he's a guy that a lot of people over here are interested in. So I was kind of watching that one primarily, but then on the other screen I'm watching Hurd and Williams, and I never really got to watch the whole thing in its entirety, sadly. But yeah, those things happen. We're going off subject completely here. Mike, the last words really. Just I wanted to throw it over to you. If you got any closing words, just to tell our listeners before we let you go, my friend.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who listens. Thank you to everyone who's followed me after our first interview. I hope to come to your neck of the woods and actually fight one day, because I hear your fans. I hear the fans over there are love boxing. They just love boxing. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in. Thank you to everyone who's following me from all the way from overseas. Please continue to follow me, and follow me on Twitter at Professor Mike, and on Instagram at Professor Mike.
At Professor Mike, and that is, by the way, MYKE for anyone that wants to go and follow Michael. Right, listen, Mike, it is always a pleasure, my friend, having you on the show. Congrats once again on your win. Please wish your brother good luck from me for this weekend, and we'll catch up sometime soon.
All right, thank you so much, man. Thanks for calling.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Ayaz, take it away. What you got?
All right, Tyson Fury's fight with Thomas Schwartz will be shown live on BT Sports Box Office.
Yeah, not quite happy with that, to be honest with you. It's not a pay-per-view fight. It's not a pay-per-view fight at all. The three main guys in the heavyweight division, we're getting on their backs for not fighting the fights that we want. This weekend, obviously, Deontay Wilder fights Dominic Breazeale. We were all bashing that fight. It's actually not that bad of a fight, to be honest. We'll talk about it in the preview part in a moment. Also, we talked about Joshua against Big Baby Miller, then Andy Ruiz Jr. I mean, that's a pay-per-view, so that's I'm not happy with that one. But the Wilder one, obviously over here, I think in the States it's on pay-per-view, but over here that one's free to air. So from my point of view, that's the best entertainment value when you're weighing up entertainment and money spent. I mean, it comes free on Sky, that fight, for us. So paying money to watch Tyson Fury against Tom Schwartz and Joshua against Andy Ruiz Jr. I preferred to watch Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. with a solid undercard. But I'm hearing the undercard that they're putting on for Tyson Fury against Schwartz isn't even a great undercard. So, honestly, I'm Fury's biggest fan, but I don't think I'm going to be paying for that one.
Right, Josh Kelly will face Ray Robinson on the undercard, Joshua vs Ruiz Jr.
Yeah, Josh Kelly in a step up, actually. This guy, Ray Robinson, obviously it's not Sugar Ray Robinson. But, he's a tough guy from Philly, 24-3 with one draw, his record. He's only been stopped once. It was to your Dennis Ugas, obviously a good fighter. That was back in the early part of last year. And he's coming off that draw recently, but it was back in March against Egis Kavalauskas. That was a fight where a lot of people thought he nicked it. And reading between the lines, Kavalauskas knocked out David Avanesian, and this guy drew with Kavalauskas. So in a way, I know boxing doesn't really work like that, but Josh Kelly's fighting a guy that drew with the guy that knocked out Avanesian. So it's a fight that we like the sound of. It sounds good. It should be a good fight. He's quite a tough guy, like I say. His other losses he lost to Sean Porter on points back in 2010. He's been a pro a long, long time, actually. And he's got that experience over Josh Kelly. So it's a good fight. And I tell you what, I really hope it gets the credit that it deserves, because it's a real risk, actually. He's a kind of high risk, low reward type of fighter, Ray Robinson. That's why he hasn't really been getting these big fights of recent times.
Right, Manny Pacquiao will face Keith Thurman on July 20th.
They said it's on pay-per-view over here at all, Ayaz. Have they said that yet?
No announcement.
No announcement. Well, that's a pay-per-view fight. I mean, I don't want to start encouraging pay-per-views at all, because there's too many of them. But, that's a fight that really does deserve some money out of my pocket, to be honest with you. And remember, those people that are trying to campaign for Froch Groves free, that'd be on pay-per-view. So think about things before you tweet them. We do not want to see that. There's too many pay-per-views. Obviously, Dillian Whyte against Rivas as well. Too many pay-per-views.
Caleb Plant will face Mike Lee for the IBF super middleweight title.
Yeah, Mike Lee, he's been a guy that's kind of been trotting around in the background. Whereas, Caleb Plant, especially in the last sort of 12 months, has really turned into such a brilliant fighter. He's got a great story. He's got a very sad story, actually, but one that really grips your heart. And Mike Lee, like I say, 21-0. He's kind of been knocking around for a while. I remember him being undefeated a few years back, but he hasn't really had the big kind of fights. He's been pushed on quite slowly. He's kind of gone a similar-ish kind of path to Jordan Gill in some ways, where he's just, been fighting kind of knockover jobs, really. Not as bad as Jordan Gill, by the way. He's fought some half-decent guys with a pulse, but, I don't think he's going to have anything to, danger Caleb Plant. I think it's a relatively easy first offence for Caleb Plant, who's just bought his first house with his missus, so credit to him. He's a friend of the show. We wish him all the best.
Yep, and that's it for the news.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayaz. Let's try and rush through this here. We're going to start at the Ulster Hall in Belfast, Northern Ireland, for the preview part here. Let's start with there's only really one fight to mention. It's happening on ESPN Plus. I think it's also on Box Nation, if I'm not mistaken. It's an MTK Global show. Ryan Burnett, the return of him. He's 19-1, former IBF Bantamweight World Champion. He fights for the vacant WBC International Super Bantamweight title against Gilbert Gomera, who's 14-5. Ryan Burnett, he hasn't even had a fight yet at Super Bantam. Obviously, he's moved up in weight, and to think that he's already fighting for a WBC minor trinket is actually a little bit suspect, especially the opponent he's taking on, Gilbert Gomera. Or Gomera, I should say. He's been in there with Kanzu. That's obviously the standout name on his record, but other than that, he got knocked out by Kanzu. It's an interesting fight. It's a weird kind of fight, really, that one. I hope it doesn't go under the radar, but Yeah, it's good to see Burnett back. And Nonito Donaire is going to be sat ringside cheering on his former opponent. What a good guy he is. He's going to be ringside there in Belfast. Moving out now, though, to the Lamex Stadium, I think it said, in Stevenage, Hertfordshire, United Kingdom. Let's talk about this bill here. We have Joe Joyce 8-0. He takes on Alexander Ustinov 34-3. I'm expecting Joyce to have way too much for Ustinov. I think that's an easy knockout there for Joe Joyce within probably 5 rounds or something. Cody Davies 8-0. He has no opponent just yet. That's a 4-rounder there. Willie Hutchinson, friend of the show, 7-0. He takes on Andre Budera, who's 9-10 with 1 draw. That's a 6-rounder there. Ryan Garner from Southampton. He's 8-0. He's in a 6-rounder against Jose Hernandez, 4-33 with 1 draw. Harvey Horn, 5-0. He's in a 6-rounder against Joel Sanchez, who's 4-2 with 1 draw. And topping the bill for some kind of version of the WBO World Super Middleweight title, Billy Joe Saunders, 27-0. He takes on Shefat Isufi, who's 27-3 with 2 draws. The bad thing about Isufi, I had a little dive through his record actually. I'm going to tell you something about the guy. It sounds great. He's got 27 wins. It's the same amount as Billy Joe, but when you actually read between the lines, there's a staggering fact I tweeted out earlier on this week. 8 of his wins have come against debutants, and another 7 of his wins came against opponents with 5 or less wins. And I think a couple of them had maybe 1 win or maybe even 0 wins. And actually, one of his 3 losses came against a debutant. I mean, think about that one. That's actually awful. I think that Billy Joe Saunders walks through him and stops him when he wants, probably in the 7th round maximum. Moving out now to the SSE in the the SSE Hydro in Glasgow, Scotland, United Kingdom. This one is a World Boxing Super Series card. It's going to be shown on Sky Sports. Thank the Lord for that one. It's a brilliant, brilliant card, this, by the way. Chantel Cameron, she gets out. I think she'll be in separate changing rooms from the likes of Shane McGuigan, you'd have thought. She is 9-0. She takes on Bianca Majaf, who has a record of 3-1. Paul Butler, former world champion, 28-2. No opponent just yet. That's an 8-rounder there. Lee McGregor gets on the bill, 5-0. He takes on Christian Narvaez, who's 15-15 with 4 draws. That's an 8-rounder there. Zach Parker, the reigning British super middleweight super middleweight British champion. He takes on Stephen Cramber. It's a easy fight back really after his operation. 17-0. Zach Parker, a friend of the show, he takes on, like I say, Stephen Cramber, 8-4 his record. Emmanuel Rodriguez, 19-0. He unifies with Naoya Inoue for the right to take on Nonito Donaire in the final of this one. It's of course for their IBF and WBA world titles. Naoya Inoue, a complete powerhouse, a bit of a phenom. Emmanuel Rodriguez, I give him a much better shot than most people do. He really impressed me against Paul Butler. He dropped him twice, I think, in the first round, and then he boxed a masterclass from that point onwards. I'm not saying that Paul Butler is anything near Naoya Inoue, but I'm just saying Emmanuel Rodriguez can stick to a game plan. He's got a great jab. He's got fantastic feet. It's one of those fights I definitely think he's going to be on the back foot. I think Inoue is going to be coming to him. That could be the undoing actually there for Rodriguez, but I give him a shot. I think he's got enough skills to try and win on points. I actually thought he was a lot taller than Inoue. I think he's about an inch taller or something like that, but Inoue's got quite long reach. He's got the longer reach despite being the shorter guy. So yeah, I think Inoue does get to him at some point, but I hope it goes a few rounds. It's a brilliant fight. But like I say, I give Rodriguez a bit of a shot, more than most do. But Inoue, like I say, if he is that special guy that we're trying to squeeze onto our pound-for-pound top 5 list, then he should do a job on Rodriguez, as sad as that may sound, because Rodriguez is a good fighter. And topping that bill, Ivan Baranchyk, 19-0. He takes on Josh Taylor, 14-0. It is for Josh Taylor's WBC Silver Super Lightweight title, but more importantly, the IBF Full World Super Lightweight World title. A 12-round fight there. Baranchyk, Ayaz, against Josh Taylor. A brilliant, brilliant fight. Give me your take.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very good fight. Obviously, it's in Scotland as well, in Josh Taylor's hometown. If I'm going to go with a win, I'm going to go with Josh Taylor to win by points, and him to become finally a world champion.
It really has been overdue, and it's the final we'd love to see between Taylor and Prograis. You're going with Taylor on points. The listeners have gone with Taylor by knockout. There's 3 fights to predict on this week, and you're all on 90. Well, you're both on 97 points. So hopefully one of you gets there this week. This could be the championship week, or the second place week. Because did I mention I've already won? Ayaz, talk to me about Inoue against Rodriguez. What's your take on that one? Inoue by knockout.
I think Inoue is a great fight with a huge amount with great knockout. So if I'm going to go win on that, I'm going to go with Inoue to win by knockout.
Yeah, you're in agreement there with the listeners. Moving out now to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, USA. This is the final card to mention. A couple fights to mention over here. The 2 younger brothers of Gary Russell Jr., they both box. Gary Antoine Russell, 8-0 with 8 knockouts. He takes on Marcos Mujica, who only got stopped once, or if he's been stopped a couple times, then the worst one was against was against Daniel Ustinov, I should say. So it'd be interesting to see where Gary Antoine Russell can kind of get his knockout, if he does indeed get one. It'd be interesting if he can do it quicker than the golden boy, Ustinov from Matchroom, obviously, the Kazakh 2016 Olympic Gold Medalist. So Antoine Russell 8-0. That's an 8-rounder against Marcos Mujica, who's 16-3 with 2 draws. Gary Antonio Russell 13-0. He's in an 8-rounder against Saul Hernandez, who's 13-12 with 1 draw. Gary Russell Jr., we had him on last week's show, 29-1. He puts his WBC world title on the line against Kiko Martinez, 39-8 with 2 draws. I'd expect Gary Russell Jr. to stop him. That is a mismatch, unfortunately. And topping the bill, as the final fight to mention, I'm going to let you go first here. Deontay Wilder, 40-0 with 1 draw. He puts his WBC world heavyweight crown on the line against Dominic Trouble Breazeale, 20-1. A friend of the show. I'd love to see Dominic Breazeale do it, but Deontay Wilder done half punch hard.
It's not really to be fair, it's really a mismatch. Obviously, we've seen.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
Okay, let me reword that. It's not the best fight to be seen for a world heavyweight title. Obviously, Deontay Wilder fighting Dominic Breazeale. If I'm going to go with a win, I'm going to go with Deontay Wilder to win by knockout. But I really can't see Dominic Breazeale winning this fight at all.
Yeah, I'd love to see Dominic Breazeale do it. He is a friend of the show. I know things are very personal. There's no fake beef between those 2 guys. It really did go off in a hotel foyer. There's all sorts of accusations flying around about the Deontay Wilder camp, and they were quite disgusting. I think Deontay Wilder's also said quite disturbing things in the build-up about, boxers losing their lives and stuff like that. It's quite distasteful. I understand you've got to sell the fight. I think he's gone a little bit overboard, and that pairing with the fact that that Dominic Breazeale is a top man. He's a good guy. He's been on the show a couple of times. He's a true gent. I really have got a lot of time for Dominic Breazeale. I'd love to see him do it, but it is a tough task. It's asking a lot out of him, but I'd love to see him do it. He's got a puncher's chance. He's got more than a puncher's chance, actually. But yeah, someone is getting knocked out, and of course you've kind of got to go with Wilder. So you're saying Wilder by knockout, Ayaz. The listeners are agreeing with you, so you're both in agreement on that one as well. But yeah, that's about it. We've tried to fly through everything as quick as possible there. That's it for the preview part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 2 and finally end the show, the last thing to do is to welcome guest number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the top heavyweight contender himself. It is, of course, Mr. Michael Hunter. Mike, welcome back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. So, Mike, we last spoke in November. It's been quite a while. It was fight week for the fight against Alexander Ustinov, a fight you had ridiculously short notice for. However, you stepped in, you flew to Monte Carlo and became the quickest man ever to stop Mr. Alexander Ustinov. Talk us through that win real quick if you can.
Well, it was a very short moment, it's always a different feeling once, you guys start getting to the hotel and you start seeing, all the other competitors and stuff. It's a different feeling. But Monaco was great, and we went there, and, it kind of came and gone very fast. I was able to get the job done. The guy was a monster of a guy of a size, and you could tell he had a lot of different experience. You could tell he's fought a lot of different smaller heavyweights by the way he was holding me down and knowing where to place his hands and stuff. So he's a very experienced guy. I was able to, like you said, stop him in probably in the best fashion that he's ever been. That's ever happened. So I was great for that, and and it was on such short notice. I think I just made a statement with that.
Yeah, you really did. And talking of Alexander Ustinov, this weekend he takes on Joyce in the UK. What are your thoughts on that fight? Obviously, there was a comment made by Joyce's manager at the time, kind of saying that Ustinov was, no good of an opponent to fight you. And then obviously his man, Joe Joyce, takes him on this weekend. So, funny how boxing works.
Yeah, I think that's kind of funny. He did. I remember exactly that he commented about me fighting, and I took it. It wasn't. It's not like I was getting ready for him. He's the one that's, he chose him. He's the one getting prepared and stuff like that. So, we'll see how he performs. You know what I'm saying? Everybody thinks it's all easy and stuff like that, but I just made it look like that. But these guys can actually fight. Martin McCauley and Ustinov, these guys they've been in the ring, and they're used to throwing hands and getting hit. So it's not going to be just a walkover. So we'll see what happens.
And before we talk about your next fight, which of course got announced formally today, for a little while you were linked with that Anthony Joshua fight on June the 1st. You were the favourite in the bookies over here to actually get the fight. Obviously, it didn't end up happening. But what did you actually know from your side? Through the whole negotiation period, what did you actually know? What can you tell us about it?
Well, I know that. They threw numbers at me, but I never really got a contract, so I kind of feel like I was, kind of just being used to throw around. But, I think, I was definitely an option at one point, but, that they wanted to find somebody else. I was probably the last option, you know what I'm saying? So they did find somebody other than me, so I think that's what happened.
And the chosen man was Andy Ruiz Jr. What are your thoughts on that fight between him and Joshua?
Everybody's, putting Andy down, but, this dude has a lot of experience, I would say he's the more experienced and intelligent fighter out of the two. He's been in the ring with tons of guys. I mean, not taking anything from Anthony, but this guy's been boxing since he was, a kid, and he's been that size since he was younger too. So, and he's been fighting guys as big as, the same size. So, this is nothing new to Andy, and that's what I think this makes this an interesting fight. You know what I'm saying? He just hasn't had his chance. He was able to fight Joseph Parker, which is moves a little bit more. What I'm saying, I think it's going to be a style make fight thing where Anthony is, becomes aggressive, and, he likes to fight, and it makes for a good clash. You know what I'm saying? I think Joseph Parker would have just been he'd rather take the, lighter route and box and stuff like that, which was going to kind of be hard for Andy. So if Anthony does that, I think it would be easy win. But, I think he likes to fight. So we'll see some hands being thrown, I think, that night.
We all hope it's going to be a good fight. As you say there, the stylistic matchup is quite intriguing. The hand speed of Andy Ruiz Jr. Obviously, you were supposed to be fighting on the Usyk Takam undercard, but that fight fell through due to Usyk picking up an injury. Then you, again, were linked for a period with the Carlos Takam fight. That's what a lot of people were saying on social media. They wanted that fight to happen. Obviously, that isn't the opponent that you've got. Again, from your point of view, Mike, why was that fight unable to get wrapped up for the 25th?
So it's a kind of a style, it's a styles make fight thing, a business thing. I don't know why they weren't able to get the fight done. I think it was, maybe also a budget thing. You know what I'm saying? I think there was a lot of things that came into play when it came for me and tackling the fight, and even though it was talked about, it was kind of short-lived because of those factors. I think it was too many little situations where, it would be hard to just meet up at some point. So I don't know. I kind of don't know what plans that Matchroom has for me or Takam or Usyk. So I'm just continuing to, follow my path and pick the right fights. I was definitely willing to fight tackle, but I think just timing wasn't right yet. So.
Yeah, I think I agree, to be honest with you. It was too short, really. Usyk obviously pulled out pretty late on. It was, about 2 weeks before the fight or something like that. So it's a bit too short, really, to throw that fight in there, I suppose. Especially the fact that the venue was going to be moved and all that kind of thing. But like I say, your next fight has been announced. It got announced today. You'll be taking on Fabio Maldonado on May 25th in Maryland. What do you know about Maldonado, Mike?
I don't know much. I actually looked up. I could see that he seems to be very strong and durable. He hasn't been stopped. What's his record? 26-2.
Yes, 26-2. Yeah.
Yes, he hasn't been stopped. The guy who's about to fight, who just beat him, what was it? I was talking about Oscar Rivas. Oscar Rivas was about to fight Dillian Whyte. So, he was supposed to fight Tyson Fury for this upcoming fight. So, he wasn't fighting the slouch. And then I looked up some other things that I see that he also fights MMA, and he's been in there with some legendary fighters as far as MMA is concerned, and they throw hands just as much as boxers do. But so he has a lot of experience. He's not going to be. I know he's going to be calm and used to having punches thrown at him, used to being in there with experienced type of guys. So he's no slouch. Like I said, he's never been stopped at almost 30 pro fights, and he has a lot of experience, a lot more experience at MMA. So he's going to definitely be a live opponent for sure.
So obviously you mentioned there Maldonado, he's a pretty tough guy. He's never been stopped, as you said. He is obviously quite a big puncher, quite probably being a bit of an understatement. He's got 26 wins, as you mentioned, 25 of them inside the distance. And those two losses that we mentioned, like I say, both on points. By the way, two unbeaten fighters. Oscar Rivas that you mentioned, and most recently Alexander Teslenko, a guy that's based in Canada, I believe, by way of Ukraine. Do you believe, though, Mike, with your current form, two back-to-back brilliant knockouts at least, do you believe that you can become the first man to stop this guy Maldonado come the 25th?
Yeah. That's what I would like to happen, and we're working on the knockout. Hopefully to get it in great fashion as well. So. But like I said, he's a tough opponent. The guys that he didn't stop him, that he lost to, are undefeated fighters. So, I know this is a tough task. I hope to outshine, everybody on the card for one, and hopefully that I get the stoppage and steal the show.
And my final real question for you, Mike, we've kind of flown through things here. You mentioned Oscar Rivas. We've mentioned him, myself and you, a couple of times during this interview. Obviously, he takes on Dillian Whyte. You box Rivas in the amateurs. That fight, though, against Whyte happens on July 20th. A good fight, actually. I really like it. Not many people do, but I actually like that fight. What are your thoughts on that one?
Those are two top guys. They're both live fighters and live opponents. Live fighters. So that is a very interesting fight. Oscar Rivas, exactly. I fought him in the amateurs. I've seen him on numerous occasions in the amateurs. So he has a lot of experience. Dillian Whyte. We all kind of know who Dillian Whyte is, but we kind of tend to look over these guys that have haven't got to just do it or shine in easy ways like Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua and all these other guys, but there's guys that are out there that's been in the amateurs and has been fighting before, was fighting before Anthony Joshua and stuff like that. They have a lot of experience and they're still live opponents. So, yeah, it's going to be definitely an interesting fight. I think Dillian Whyte will pull it off by split decision or something close. if it's, one of them doesn't get hit with a big banger. But I think Dillian Whyte should win it, but by close. I don't think he's going to blow him out. If he does, that would be a good statement to put on for him.
And I'm going to throw this one in as well, Mike. Obviously, you were linked with a Joshua fight. You were being talked about for Takam, perhaps. These are all big-name opponents. These are a step up from the likes of Ustinov, from the likes of Bacoli, in fairness. I want to just kind of ask you, which type of fighters, realistically, are you looking at for the fight past this one? So, this fight obviously takes place next weekend. So we're at the back end of May there. So you'll probably fight 1 or 2 times, I'm guessing, in the remainder of 2019. What type of guys are you looking at in a realistic world?
It's we kind of started the year off late as far as Matchroom, and the couple incidents that happened, from the moving the event to Big Baby, so I think they kind of got kind of a little startled from in this year, the way they started. And I'm not really sure. I thought they had an exact plan, but I really think, it's going to be very hard and difficult for me to get fights unless the big money fights, So I really don't know who to say to fight next, I'm going to let them throw me some names, and whoever they got for me, I'm going to go from there, it's very hard to say at this point.
I know that you'll fight anyone anyway, so it's one of those questions that you don't really need to answer too much. And finally, Mike, just before I let you go, any closing message at all to our listeners just before we let you go, my friend?
To the British fans, thank you guys for following me and supporting me. Even though I'm, not British, but you guys have always been
they love you.
Top-notch fans. Yeah, they love me, and I really appreciate all the love, and I really enjoy that. So, follow me on Michael Bounty Hunter on my Instagram, and Michael Hunter _2, or not underscore, but 2 on Twitter. So, and all the other fans out there, continue to watch out for my career and continue to follow me. And that's pretty much it.
That is the message from the People's Champ. Listen, Mike, it is always a pleasure speaking with you. You know that. Best of luck for the 25th, and I'm sure that we'll catch up sometime after.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 187 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you to our 2 guests on this week's show, the super lightweight world contender, Mr. Mykal Fox, and of course, the heavyweight world contender, Michael Hunter. The prediction league is still the same as last week because no one was able to capitalise on the predictions from last weekend. Dogbay lost, and of course, Jarrett Hurd lost as well. This week, though, there are another 3 points up for grabs. It's finally about to be over. There are 1 or 2 pieces of news that have broken while we've been recording the show. Michael Conlan will be taking on Vladimir Nikitin on August the 3rd in Belfast. Of course, Conlan gets his chance to avenge that controversial loss to Nikitin from the 2016 Olympic Games in Brazil. A brilliant fight has actually been added to the undercard of Warrington vs Galahad, a good all-domestic dust-up. We'll get to see Leon Woodstock collide with Zelfa Barrett, 2 men that both lost their O last year but are still 2 good super featherweight prospects. And of course, Francesco Patera will be defending his European title against Paul Hyland Jr. That one is set to take place on June 28th on a Matchroom Italy card, actually. Both men have fought Lewis Ritson. Lewis Ritson demolished Paul Hyland Jr., to be fair, and Patera obviously beat Ritson, so hopefully that one ends up being a good fight. And lastly, Top Rank have signed the 2 Australian twins, Jason and Andrew Maloney, 2 good fighters there, so I'm excited to see what pans out for them. And I just want to say, finally, thank you all for listening to this week's show. That is about everything. Enjoy your weekends, people, and we shall see you all again next week.